Begin today a new Perek, the second Perek of Masechta Yoma. So the Mishnah here begins with halachas benegeh to the seder of the Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash, and I'm going to go through the Mishnayos here regarding the Geirolis, the pious that they made to give out the Avedas in the Beis Hamikdash. According to some Rishonim, the subject that's discussed in this Perek is not relevant for Yom Kippur, because in Yom Kippur they did not make any pious, since the Aveda is only for the Kohen Gadol. But according to other Rishonim, the Mishnah speaks about the pious, and then the next Mishnah, a second pious and a third pious. It was made on Yom Kippur as well, because not all Avedas were done by the Kohen Gadol. There were certain Avedas that were still done by other people, and therefore there was a pious. Either way, even if what it says in the Mishnayos here was done in Yom Kippur, but this Perek discusses these inyanim that are not specifically for Yom Kippur. This is the Aveda, it's what's done every day in the Beis Hamikdash. Bari Shaina, in the beginning, the order was as follows. Kol misha reitze litre mis. Anyone that wanted to take off the ashes of the Mizbeach, which was the first Aveda done in the morning, as it says in the Mishnah at the end of the previous Perek, it was done before Aleis HaShachar. Teirim, anyone could come and do it. And in a time when there were many kainim that were there was the Beis Av that was there every day, that it was their turn to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and if there were many kainim of that Beis Av, so who would they choose? So they would have the following, they would do it in the following way. Rotzen v'oilim bekevesh, the kainim would run up, they would sort of race up the ramp of the Mizbeach, and kol ha'kaidim es chaveirei ba'arba ames, whoever came before his friend into the 4 ames of the top of the roof of the Mizbeach, Zocha. He's the one that was Zeiche and the Aveda of taking off the ashes. If there were 2 Kainim that came to that point at the same time, there was a tie, so what do you do then? So then they made a raffle between them. The Mamuna, the one in charge, came and said to them, Hatzviu, we have to make a raffle to see who's going to be the one appointed. And what would they do? They would all stand in a big circle, and everyone would stick out a finger. What would they stick out? 1 or 2 fingers. And the Gemara will explain why 1 or 2 fingers. And a gudel b'mikdash. You're not allowed to stick out the thumb in this raffle in the Beis Hamikdash. The thumb is separated from the rest of the fingers. So you can stick out the thumb. So if a person, the way this raffle worked, Rashi brings it here, we'll see it in the Gemara. The Kohen Gadol, the Mamuna, chose a certain number, and then they began counting, and when he came to that number and it stopped by that Kohen Gadol, or by that Kohen, that Kohen would get that Aveda. And everyone stuck out a finger. So what's if there's a Kohen that sees that the number that they chose, so it's going to miss him, and he's going to stick out his thumb, and his thumb is going to look like it's from a different person. They won't realize that he's sticking out an extra finger because it's like further away from his hand. So then he's going to see that if he sticks out his thumb, he's going to get the Aveda. So therefore they didn't allow to stick out the thumb in the Beis Hamikdash, it's only the other fingers. So this is how the raffle was made. Maisa, there was once a story. So this was the way the Seder was in the beginning. But then once there was a story, Shayushneim Shavin, they came together. And they came together, and then they ended at the same point at the top of the ramp. And one of them pushed his friend, v'nafal, and he fell, v'nishbara raglai, and he broke his foot. When the Bezin saw that they're coming this is dangerous, having them make a race here on the ramp of the Mizbeach, and after there was a tie that came to such a danger, so then they instituted that even this Aveda of removing the ashes of the Mizbeach should be done with a raffle. And Arba Payases Hayisham, there were 4 different raffles in the Beis Hamikdash. V'zeh Hapayas Harisha. This was the first raffle in the morning, even before Aleis HaShachar, to see who's the Zeiche in this Aveda. Fragt the Gemara, V'ha meikare my time leitkinu le'rabbanam payasa. Initially, in the beginning, what's the reason why they didn't institute that there should be a raffle for this? Why allow them to run and to race? Why didn't they make a raffle for this, just like every other Aveda? Answers the Gemara, Meikare Savar, because initially the Chachamim thought, Kivin, the Avedas Lailahi, since this is an Aveda that's still done during the night, Loi Chashiv V'luhu, so it's not so important, it's not such a great Aveda for the Kainim, and V'layasu, so not many Kainim are going to come to do this Aveda. Kivin, the Chazid the Kaasu, now and then they saw that many Kainim are coming and want to do this Aveda, they came to a sakana, as the Mishnah explained, Tekinu lepayasa. Then they instituted there should be this raffle. So the Gemara asks on this reason, how could you say that this is the reason? The pieces and the fats of the karbonis, that Avedis Lailahi, that's an Aveda at nighttime that they burn it on the Mizbeach. Utkinu l'Rabbanan payasa. And the Rabbanan instituted a payas. There is a raffle, as we'll see later, that to give out this Aveda, who's the one that brings it on the Mizbeach. And this is an Aveda of the nighttime. So we see even an Aveda of the nighttime is significant enough that you make a raffle for it. So the Gemara answers, Seif Aveda diyamamihi. That Aveda of burning these pieces on the Mizbeach is not considered to be an Aveda of the night. It's the conclusion of the Aveda that was done during the day. So Gemara asks, if that's how you understand that, so you say the same thing here regarding removing the ashes. Hi Nami, removing the ashes in the morning or before morning, Tchilas Aveda diyamamihi. This is considered to be already the beginning of the Aveda of the day, preparing for the day. And where do we see this? The Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Kiddush Yadav L'Trumas Hadeshen. If the Kain that came to remove the ashes, he already sanctified his hands, he washed his hands by the water from the Kir before he removed the ashes. Lo Machar, the next day, meaning that morning after Aleis HaShachar, Ein Tzarech LeKadosh. He doesn't have to wash his hands again. Shekvar Kiddush mitchilas Aveda, because he already washed his hands from the beginning of the Aveda. So in the statement of Rabbi Yechanan, you see that it refers to the Trumas Hadeshen as Tchilas Aveda. This is considered to be the beginning of the Aveda of the day. So the Gemara says, no, we could change. We have to change a little bit the wording that he said. Eime, read it instead, Shekvar Kiddush mitchila le'aveda. Since he was already mekadesh his hands in the beginning, before Aveda, when he was doing the haramas hadeshen that comes before the Aveda of the day, so that's good enough. Because he's there already in the Beis HaMikdash, and we're not afraid that he's going to be Masiach Das from the holiness that there is from when he was mekadesh his hands and feet there in the morning or before morning, so therefore he doesn't have to do it again. But the Haramas Hadeshen is not considered to be the beginning of the Aveda. It's considered to be something that's before the Aveda, which is not like the Eivarim and the Pedarim, which is considered to be a conclusion of the Aveda of the day. And therefore, that had more chshivas than this Aveda of the Haramas Hadeshen. Ikkedamri, another pshat, another answer to the question, why in the beginning they did not institute a raffle for the Aveda of Haramas Hadeshen. Meikare Savar, because in the beginning, the Chachamim thought, Kivin the Ikka Einis Shina, since it's people are going to be sleeping and they're not going to be able to get up so early, Leyasu, they're not going to come to do this. Kivin the Chazadasu, then they saw that the Kainim got up very early to come do that Haramas Hadeshen, and V'ka'asa namli de sakana, and it's coming to a danger. Tkinu l'Rabbana payasa. So the Rabbana made the takana to have the raffle even for this as well. So again, the Gemara asks, if so, v'harei varim u'pedarim, say the same thing regarding the Aveda that has to be done all nighttime to bring the parts of on the Mizbeach. De'eka einis shina, so also it's late at night, people are tired and they'll fall asleep, and not many kainim will be there. Utkina l'Rabbanan payasa, and still Rabbanan instituted a raffle to be made for this. So the Gemara answers, no, it's very different. Shani migna mimekem. The issue of a person falling asleep is different than getting up in the morning. Once you're sleeping, to get up in the morning is much more difficult than staying up late at night. So over there, they were not concerned that people won't be there, so they made the raffle for that.
Obviously, it wasn't the night before.
So it could be done the entire night. It's an Aveda that went very, very late at night. There's a lot of kabbanis of the day, and that it could be burnt kol halayla. So there was an Aveda during the whole night. So, Frek the Gemara, now Gemara goes back to the beginning to this whole thing, and the Gemara says, is the takana in this way, the way it was described here in the Mishnah, that in the beginning they would run up, and then because of the danger, they changed it. That's what happened. Havoi, is that what it was? Takanta lahagisa havoi. But there's a Braisa that says that the takana was in a different way. What does it say in the Braisa? The Tanya, the Braisa says, Misha Zocha betrumas hadesh, the one that was zeiche in the raffle to do the Trumas Hadeshen. B'sid maracha, so he also is zeicha. So you can go Yiske, he's also zeicha b'sid maracha to prepare the place of the maracha where the karbanis will be burnt. In other words, he's misada the woods over there. Or b'shnei gizrei eitzim. There are 2 big logs of wood that were placed on the mizbeach every day. He's also zeicha in placing the new wood over there on the mizbeach. So what do you see over here in this Braisa? That there's a raffle that was made for it. And that raffle also included to be Mesada the Maracha and the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim. It wasn't just the Trumas Hadeshen. Trumas Hadeshen was done before Aleisa Shachar. But the other things that it mentions here, that was done later. So it seems like there was one big raffle for all three of them. Not like it says in the Mishnah that the Haramas Hadeshen was separate and then in the beginning they did not make a raffle for it. Ravashi, so Ravashi explains, Shtei Takonis Havu. There were two different takonis here, and the way it happened was as follows. Meikare Savor, in the beginning the Chachamim thought that Loi Osu, that the Kainim will not come. Kiv in the Chaz of the Kasu, and then they saw that the Kainim are coming, V'osu namli de Sakone, and it became dangerous, the Kinule Payasa. Then they instituted that there should be a raffle for the Haramas Hadeshen. Then, what happened? Kiv in the Kinule Payasa, once they instituted that you could only remove the ashes if you win the raffle, lo yasu. So then now the kainim stopped coming. Amri, they said, mi yemed misramilon. Who says that I'm going to be the one to win the raffle? I mean, it's hard, like you said before, it's hard to get up so early in the morning, or it's not such an important aveda of the day. So if you know for sure that you think that I'm going to run, I'm going to I'll be the first one, so then they came. But if it's based on a raffle, so then they stopped coming. So then came the second takana. Hada tekinulahu. So then they instituted that Mish Zacha beTrumas Hadeshen, the one that Zeiche in the Trumas Hadeshen, Yiske besidur Maracha, should also be Zeiche in setting up the wood in the Mizbeach, or B'shnei Gizrei Eitzim, and the two logs of wood that they placed in the Mizbeach, Kehechi the Neisuv and Efaisu. So the Kainim should see that it's one big pious that includes not only the schos of Haramas Hadeshen, which is very early in the morning, but it also includes the schos of preparing the Mizbeach, which is later on as well. Said in the Mishnah, Bizman Shein Merubin, so they would race up to the top of the ramp of the Mizbeach, and whoever came within 4 amas to the top is the one that won the race. Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa said, Pshita li, it's obvious, the pshat in the Mishnah here is, Arba amas, the are loy. The Mishnah is not referring to the 4 amas at the ground before you come onto the ramp. Because Ratzin Vailun Bekevishtan, it says that it would run up the ramp. Kamaisa nami loy, when the Mishnah says when they reached 4 amas, it's not referring to the first 4 amas of the ramp, because Ratzon Veilim Bekevishnan, again, because it says in the Mishnah that they ran up the ramp, and Vahadar, and only then, Kol HaKaidim is Chaveiroi, whoever is first, whoever reached up on the top of the ramp before his friend, that's the one that got to do the Haramas Hadeshen. So we're not referring to the first 4 amas of the ramp. The Beini nami loy, we also cannot say that these 4 amas that we're talking about over here is somewhere in the middle of the ramp when they reached a certain point. So then, whoever got there first is the one that did the Aveda, because the loy Messiah Milsa. There's no specific place where it's clear to see where in the middle of the ramp would you say those 4 amas are that you have to reach in order to be Zeich in it. So pshitali, so it's obvious to me that the pshat of the Mishnah is the Gabe Mizbeach Tnan. We're referring to the 4 amas of the top of the Mizbeach. Whoever reached within 4 amas of the roof of the Mizbeach, that's the one that got to do the Aveda. But now here Rav Papa has a question. Boy, Rav Papa, the question though is, Arba amas shamru, the Arba amas that was said here, Bahadei Amma Yisaid v'Amma Seiviv, do we include the Amma of the Yisaid, of the foundation of the Mizbeach that was sticking out, and an Amma of the Seiviv that was sticking out? The Mizbeach was 32 amas by 32 amas. But that's only if you include the bottom of the Mizbeach, the Yisaid of the Mizbeach. But then it went in 1 amma, and then there was the Seiviv where it went in yet another amma. Right, so the question is, do I say that the 4 amas that we're speaking about includes also the ramp which overlapped over that Yisaid and over the Seiviv, and therefore, when we say 4 amas, it means literally 4 amas within the roof of the actual Mizbeach, not including the Yisaid and the Seiviv, because the ramp was overlapping that. Or maybe the pshat of the 4 amas of the Mishnah is bar me'ama, not including the amma of the Yisaid, and the amma Seiviv, and not including the amma of the Seiviv. So meaning besides the 4 amas, within 4 amas of the roof of the Mizbeach, you also have to account for another amma for the Seiviv and another amma for the Yisaid, which really means that whoever reached within 6 amas of the top of the Mizbeach, that's the one that was Zeich in the Aveda. Teiku. So he didn't answer this question.
Why did they run up all the way till the Mizbeach?
Till the roof of the Mizbeach. I guess the one that didn't have to do the Aveda, they had no reason to go onto the roof, so the place was 4 amas before. No.
Why should you think it's the Am and the Yisoi too? I mean,
Right.
Like you're saying, because you shouldn't go to the roof of the
Right.
Mizbech,
So why should it include that? Yeah. Okay. Good question. If they were all equal, so then they would make a raffle between all the kainim. It's interesting. There's a pshat of the Taisus Yantif on this. He says there were only two kainim that were tied in this race. So why can't they just make a raffle between these two kainim? So he says if you're going to make a raffle between the two kainim, the way they made the raffle, when each one sticks out their finger, whatever number the kain is going to choose, you know from the beginning who's going to win the raffle. If he chooses an odd number, so the second person wins the raffle. If he chooses an even number, so again, if he chooses an even number, the second person wins. If he chooses an odd number, the first person that he starts off with wins. So you can't really make a raffle with two people by choosing a number and having them sticking out their fingers without knowing in advance who's going to win it. So that's what they did once so they included more, they included all the kainim. That's a Taisus Yantiv's pshat. Okay, true. And a Chanami, the Mefarshim say that. Maybe 3 people were tied, maybe 4 people were tied. Yeah. Okay, so Tane, it says in Abraisa as follows. Haitziyu etz beiseichem leminyan v'nimninu l'didu. Stick out your fingers, and we're going to count only the fingers. We're not going to count the Kainim themselves. And this is a proof of what Rabbi Yitzchak said. Rabbi Yitzchak, also limnus es Yisrael, you're not allowed to count Yidden, afilet l'dvar mitzvah, even for the purpose of a mitzvah. He counted them with bazak. What does bazak mean? So the Gemara is understanding now that bazak means he counted broken pieces of earthenware. When they wanted to count the people, each person put down a broken piece of earthenware, and they counted that instead of the people. Maskefla Ravashi says this pasuk is not a good source. How do you know that's what it means? The high bazak lishna de mivzaku. The word bazak means mivzak, which is broken earthenware. V'dilmish shma de masuhu. Maybe bazak is the name of a place that he counted them there in the place bazak, and he actually did count them. Kidchsev. Where do you see that bazak is the name of a place? The pasuk says vayimtzu adaini bazak. My master was found in bazak. Ella, the answer is there's a different pasuk. Mehacha. Pasuk says, Vayishama Shaul esa'am. Shaul gathered the Yidden. Vayifkedeim batloim. And he counted them through lambs. Each one had a lamb, and they counted the tloim instead of counting the people themselves. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Kol ha'moines Yisrael, anyone that counts Yidden, oiver b'lav. He's oiver in a lav. Shenema, the pasuk says, V'hoya mispa b'nei Yisrael k'choil hayam. And the number of Yidden will be like the sand by the sea. Ashalayima, that should not be counted. So this is a bracha, but he also understands it also as a command that they should not be counted. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak says, Omar, oiver b'shnei lavim. You're over on 2 lavim. Shenem ala yomid v'lo yisafer. 2 different expressions that the pasuk uses, not to measure, not to count. So it's 2 lavim. Omar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Rav Yonasan Rami. Rav Yonasan asked the question. Ksiv, it says there in the pasuk, V'hoya mispa b'nei Yisrael k'choil hayam, that the number of Yidden will be like the sand by the sea. And the pasuk says that the Yidden are not going to be counted at all. So is the Yidden's number going to be so great like the sand by the sea? It's a big number, but it's still something that could be counted. Or is it that Yidden will not be counted? Like Kashi, it's not a question. When Yidden fulfill Hashem's will, so then Yidden are unlimited, can't be counted at all. When Yidden are not fulfilling Hashem's will, so then they could be counted. This is brought in Chassidus, the Rebbe brings this in a Sikha as well, that the meaning of Eisen Ritzayin Shel Makom doesn't just simply mean fulfilling mitzvahs, but it means fulfilling the Eibishter's Ratzon when a Yid is fully dedicated to doing what Hashem wants without any limitations. B'chol ma'oidcha. The Lashon that the Gemara says in Brachas, the difference between the first parasha of Shema and the second parasha of Shema is that in the first parasha it says B'chol ma'oidcha, Eisen Ritzayin Shel Makom. In the second parasha it doesn't say B'chol ma'oidcha, that's Ein Eisen Ritzayin Shel Makom. When a Yid serves the Eibishter in a not stam to do the mitzvahs, but Eisen Ritzayin Shel Makom in an unlimited way, then the Yidden become unlimited, they can't be counted at all. That's the meaning of the Gemara here. Rabbi Yoma, Rabbi says, Mishum Abba ben Yosi ben Destoy, in the name of Abba Yosi ben Destoy, Loi Kasha, the answer for this contradiction here is, Kan bidei Adam, and Kan bidei Shemayim. That bidei Adam, so the Yidden can't be counted, but bidei Shemayim, the Yidden could be counted. So the Gemara weiter, Rav Niloi said, Rav Niloi bar Idi, Oma Shmuel, the name of Shmuel. Kivin shenismana Adam, Parnas ala Tzibor, when a person is appointed to be a leader on the Yidden, on the Tzibor, Mis Asher Meikara, the Eibishter makes him rich from the beginning. Ksiv vayifkedem bozok. First it says that he counted them in bozok. What does bozok mean? So we're going back to the pshat that it said before, that he counted them by each one. Each one had a broken piece of earthenware, and they counted that instead of counting the people. L'b'sayf, what does it say afterwards? Ksiv, it says by Shol HaMelech v'yifkedem b'tloim, that he counted that each person had a lamb that was counted instead of the people. So the Gemara is understanding now. First, Shol HaMelech provided each one with a broken piece of earthenware to count them. But later, once he was appointed as a king, he had enough lambs to give each person a lamb. So he became rich. So the Gemara says, how do you know? V'dilme mididhu. Maybe he didn't provide them anything. Maybe they had from their own. Each one brought a lamb, and that's what they counted. So the Gemara says, Imkei Mayra Busa de Milsa. What's the chiddush of the pasuk? What's the pasuk telling me that they counted lambs? So therefore it's mashma that he is the one that provided it for them, and he became rich. Pasuk says, Vayorev banochal. And they fought in the valley. What does this mean? This is referring to a war that they had over there, that they were fighting a war in the valley. Rav Mani says a drasha, a different shader. Al iskei nachal. They were fighting about Iskei Nachal. What does this mean? When the Eibishter told Shaul HaMelech, Leich, you should go, V'yikisas Amalek, and you should kill out the nation of Amalek. That was the fight that they were fighting there in that valley, fighting against Amalek. So Shaul HaMelech said to himself, when you find one person dead, what does the Torah say? Hava egla rufa, bring an egla rufa, and because of the tragedy that happened, kol hanefashis halalu, all of these people here of Amalek, alachas kama v'kama. Most definitely, I shouldn't kill them all. V'im adam, that's one thing he said, and then he also said v'im adam chat, if even the human beings of the nation of Amalek sinned, behema machata. The animals, what did they sin? I shouldn't kill them. I shouldn't kill the animals. V'im gedailim chatu, if the ones that are Gedailim, that are older, adults sinned, Ktane machatu, the children, what did they sin for? So I'm not going to kill the children from Amalek. Yatsa baska v'amraloi, so Abaskal came out and said to him, Al tihi tzaddik harbe, don't be so righteous, and fulfill what the Eibishter wants of you, and don't be so righteous that you don't want to kill all the people of Amalek. This is the Vayorav Benachal, the argument that there was, the discussion that he was having there with himself in this valley. And now a similar thing the Gemara says, when Shaul told Doeg, go around to Pegab Kainim and kill the Kainim in this city. This is a story where Shaul HaMelech killed out a whole city of Kainim because he thought that they were supporting David HaMelech. So over there, Yotza Baska v'Amrulay, Baskal came out and said to him, Al tir shahar, but don't be so wicked because they're supporting David HaMelech to kill a city of Kainim. Rav Hunne said regarding Shaul HaMelech and David HaMelech, Kama lecholi v'lemargish gavre, how much a person does not sense and does not feel the more saye, that the Eibishter is supporting him, that the Eibishter is helping him. And here the Gemara will point out that both Shaul HaMelech sinned and David HaMelech sinned, actually seemingly even more than Shaul HaMelech, and nevertheless Shaul HaMelech was removed from being a king and not David HaMelech. Shaul sinned one time v'olsaloi, and that cost him his kingdom. David sinned twice, and the Eibishter protected him. It didn't cost him his kingdom. Shaul sinned one time. What is it? Agag. This story by Amalek, when he did not wipe out the whole nation of Amalek, and he left Agag alive. So that was one time that he sinned. Frekte Gemara, that's the only time. What we just brought before, there was another thing. There's the second time, the story when he killed the whole city of Kainim. And it says the Gemara, Amaise the Agag ksiv, it's after the story when he did not kill Agag, is when the pasuk says, Nichamti ki emlachti es Shaul lemelech. I've changed my mind that I've appointed Shaul HaMelech as a king. So even after only one sin, the Eibishter took away the kingdom from Shaul HaMelech. David HaMelech sinned twice, and still the Eibishter didn't take his kingdom away from him. Ninu, what are the two Averis? The Uriah, the Avera of Uriah, that David HaMelech had him sent into battle and caused him to get killed. That was one Avera. With the Hasasa. And the other Avera was Hasasa, which is when he was convinced to count all the Yidden close to the end of his life. So David HaMelech was convinced that he should count all the Yidden, and that brought about a plague on Klal Yisrael. So those were the two times that he sinned. Fragt the Gemara, but there's another time. There's the story where he married Bathsheba, and that was also considered to be an Aveda. Even though really, once he married her, Uriah already was killed, and really she was not an Eshes Ish, but because it was perceived this way, it's also considered to be an Aveda. And says the Gemara, Hasam Ifrumine. Over there's no chiddush the fact that his kingdom wasn't taken away from him. That's not included in this, because there he was punished for that separately. The pasuk says, this is the nevuah over there that it says, that I think it was Shmuel that was telling him, Vesakivsa Yishalem Arbosayim. This was used as an analogy that the kivsa, the lamb, will pay 4 times. He was telling him that he's going to be punished 4 different times. What are the 4 things that he was punished with? Yeled, that this is the first child that was born, that I think passed away, and Amnon, the second child that was born and that was also killed, and Tamar and Vavshalom. And Tamar, I believe what happened was Amnon had an inappropriate relationship with Tamar, and then also the story with Avshalom, the way he died and the way he fought with David HaMelech. So he was punished. David HaMelech, because of the story of Bathsheba, was punished with these 4 children. Hasamnami. So if the Gemara now asks a question, so if you're telling me by the story of Bathsheba that he was punished, and therefore it's not counted as the 2 Averis, that is the Chiddush, that his kingdom was not taken away from him, Hasamnami Ifrumine. So over there also, in the other Averis that was mentioned before, he was also punished. Vayitin Hashem Dever Ba'am Mina Baike V'adei Smayid. When he did the Aveda that was mentioned before, Hasasa, when he counted the Yidden, so what happened? It brought about a big plague on Klal Yisrael. So this was a punishment also for David HaMelech himself. And says the Gemara, yes, it was a punishment, but Hasam la Ifrum Migufe. Over there, David HaMelech in his own body, he personally was not punished for that. So the Gemara asks, Hasam nami la Ifrum Migufe. If so, over there, he was not punished in his body as well by the sin of Bathsheba. He also wasn't punished in his own body. So the Gemara says, lie. No, the truth is, Ifru Migufe. He was punished in his own body. Where do we see this? Rav Yudah Marav Shisha Chadoshim Nitztara David. After the story with Bathsheba, so he became a Metzayra for 6 months. A Parsha Heimenu Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin separated from him. V'nistalka Heimenu Shchina, and the Shchina was removed of him as well. The Chsiv, as you see from the pasuk that it says, Yeshuvuli Reyecha V'Yeded V'Secha, that the ones that fear Hashem and the ones that know the halachas should return to me. This is because they separated from him for a period of time. And it also says, that the joy of the Eibishter, of the salvation, should return to me. So he was personally punished for that. But there's another time that David HaMelech sinned, because Rav said, Kibul David Lashon Hara, that David was Mekabel Lashon Hara. This is a Lashon Hara regarding Mipi Boishes, that he was Mekabel Lashon Hara from Tziva, Rashi brings. So he was Mekabel Lashon Hara. That's another time that he sinned. So the Gemara answers, Kishmuel, here it's following the opinion of Shmuel, the Amar, like Kibul David Lashon Hara, that David did not listen to any of this Lashon Hara. Rav Nami the Amar Kibul David Lashon Hara. Rav says that David did accept this Lashon Hara about Mipi Boishes, but for that he was punished separately for. He said in the name of Rav, when David HaMelech said to Mipi Boishes, Amarti ato v'tzive tachleku es asade, because he heard Lashon Hara about Mipi Boishes, so he wanted to take away part of the Yerusha of Mipi Boishes, and he said, you and Tziva will divide the inheritance. Yotza Baskel v'amra, a Baskel came out and said, and said to David HaMelech, Rechavam v'yiravam yachleku es hamalchos. The kingdom of David HaMelech and by his descendants will be divided. The Rechavam and Yiravam will divide the Melucha, and the Melucha of David HaMelech will not be over all of Klal Yisrael. Gemara continues now Benigeya to Shaul HaMelech. Ben Shana Shaul b'Molchai. It says in the pasuk that Shaul was 1 year old when he was a king. Ravuna said, Ki ben Shana shleitom tamchet. He was like a child that was 1 year old that did not taste the taste of sin. And that's what it means that he was a year old, that he didn't do any Averis. Maskef Rav Nachman by Yitzchak. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak asked a question on this pshat. Maybe the pshat is the opposite. Maybe the pasuk is saying Ki ben Shana, like a child that's a year old, shemeluchlich betitu b'tzaya, that gets himself dirty with cement and other dirt. Maybe that's what it means, that he was dirty with Averis. So after Rav Nachman asked this question, he started having nightmares in his sleep because of this question. Because he said this thing about Shaul HaMelech, he started having nightmares. Omar, so Rav Nachman ben Yitzchak said, Nanesi lachem atzmus Shaul ben Kish. If you should forgive me, or I agree that he was speaking to Shaul HaMelech, to the bones of Shaul HaMelech, and saying that he should forgive him for what he had said about him, that maybe he was dirty with Averis. But it didn't help. He was still seeing these nightmares in his dream. Omar, so then he said, Nanesi lachem atzmus Shaul ben Kish melech Yisrael. I agree to you that to Shaul HaMelech, the king of Eden, that you did not sin, and then the nightmares went away. So he added Melech Yisrael, so that's what helped. Why was the kingdom of Shaul HaMelech not continued for the future generations? Answer is, so the reason actually is because in his family, Shaul HaMelech himself had absolutely nothing. He's a perfect person, so perfect, too perfect. You don't appoint someone as a leader over the people unless he has some issue in his family. There has to be something. Gemara gives this example of a box of shratzim that is hanging with him, so that he shouldn't become too much of a Baal Gaiva. Because if he will be a Baal Gaiva, you can say to him, go back, that you should go away from your position. Person that's too perfect, so if this can come to Gaiva, and therefore by Shaul HaMelech, it didn't continue in his family. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rab, why was Shaul punished? Unlike by David HaMelech, which means there was the Aveda that it said that he did before, but what was really the underlying factor that Dafki he was punished and not David HaMelech? Because he was Meichel, he forgave on his honor, then he shouldn't have. Shenema, the Pasuk says, after he was appointed as a king, Uvneiv Liyal Omru, the bad people, they said to him, what is he going to help us? They embarrassed him. They didn't bring a mincha that should have been brought then when he was appointed as a king. And Vayehi Kemachrish. Shaul was quiet, he didn't respond to this. Ksiv, the Pasuk later says, Vayal Nochasha Meini, Vayichan Al Yavish Gila V'Gomer, that there was a war over there amongst the Yidden, and the Rashi here brings the continuation of the Pasuk, and it says there, the Pasuk says, that they didn't believe in Shaul HaMelech, that he could help them at all, they didn't follow him, and therefore, he should have been Meichel, he should have protested against him, he shouldn't have given up on his honor. And because he wasn't Meichel, because he was Meichel on his honor, so therefore he couldn't remain, the kingdom couldn't remain with him, and it didn't follow in the future generations.